Hello, and welcome to the third installment of the Health 360 series. This is a full demo of the Be Well, Live Well digital journal Excel file, consisting of a three-part video covering the usage of the journal, the dashboards, and some additional functionalities. There is also a quick tour video showing a glimpse of the Be Well, Live Well digital journal template. In this quick tour, I show the key aspects of the workbook without going too much into the details. I will leave the link in the description in case you want to check that one out. This third template of the Health 360 series is a comprehensive wellness and habit tracker digital journal designed to help you keep track of your everyday wellness and well-being, serving as a tool to build, improve, and maintain healthy habits to achieve a balanced and healthier lifestyle. This Microsoft Excel template allows you to keep track of energy, mood, and stress levels, water intake, exercise, sleep, meditation, and healthy meals per day, as well as up to 30 daily habits. What I like the most about it is that this file implements three unique, spectacular, and fully automated dashboards for you to evaluate and celebrate your performance across all your metrics. These videos are meant to give you the full tour of what's included in the template, how it's built, and the functionalities implemented. Feel free to check the link to my shop to find all the Health 360 series products as well as other Excel templates and productivity tools. You can also check out my YouTube channel to see other product demos, tutorials, and mini courses that might be of interest to you. Now that we're all set, let's dive straight into the good stuff. There are four main sections that I want to cover for this video: file structure, customization, your daily journal, and the dashboards. For this part 1, I will go over the first three, leaving the dashboards for part 2. After that, I will be covering additional functionalities and final remarks on part 3, but don't worry, we'll go step by step so you can follow along. Let's talk about file structure. There are 5 tabs or worksheets in this file. While we will go into detail into each one of them later, for now, I just want you to get a summary of what's in them. First tab, customization. Here, you will configure and customize your entire template. Then, my journal, which you will use to define and track your well-being, wellness, and habits. And then finally, you have the 3 dashboards, one for each of the group of metrics mentioned. You have the well-being one to visualize daily, weekly, and monthly summaries of energy, mood, and stress levels. Wellness, where you will visualize overall monthly and weekly achievements across water intake, exercise, sleep, meditation, and healthy meals. And habits, where you can visualize up to 5 habits at once and celebrate your performance and achievements. There are a few key things you need to know regarding this template's format before you start using it. First, let's talk about automated cells. Whenever you see a cell that has a colored background, so this one, for example, or this one, or even this one's, or if you look at your dashboards and you see this one, or any of these ones for that matter, that means that that cell has a formula and therefore it is automated. It's very important for you to remember that you should not modify those cells, otherwise you will break the functionality implemented in your template. In some instances, cells are to be kept as reference, for example in customizations. While these cells do not implement a formula, they need to be kept as reference so that when you customize your template, you know what you have changed. Next, editable cells. White background cells is generally a good to go cell and you can change their value. So you can see that your journal is full of them because it's expected for you to fill it out. Some cells in your worksheet will turn yellow whenever an input is required. Let's see, for example, what happens if I delete this value here. As I mentioned, the yellow background means an input is required. Let's undo that. Some cells will implement dropdowns for you to make a selection. For example, this one. You can see that if I click the arrow, there's a selection from which I can choose. Note that only the values that appear in the dropdown will be allowed for those cells that implement them. Another example, days per week for habits, 1 through 7, for example. Now, the third type of cell is conditional formatting cells. Several cells, as you just saw one of those, implement special format which gives them certain attributes depending on various conditions. For example, the highlighting that I just mentioned. What happens if I delete this value? It turns yellow because an input is required. Or what happens if I select as highlight date September 6th and I click here to go? You'll see that this column is now highlighted because it corresponds to the date that I have highlighted in my journal. And every single cell has also a highlighted border indicating I should focus on that. Finally, freeze panes. That is the feature in the spreadsheet that locks rows and or columns in place so that they can remain visible while scrolling through the rest of the worksheet. For example, let's look at this dashboard. You can see that cell G6 appears to be always frozen, since no matter if I scroll to the right or if I scroll down, you can always keep sight of it. And the effect that it has is that you can always take a look at the headers implemented and also the rows on the left panel. The way you go about this is you click on View, Freeze Panes, and then click on either Freeze or Unfreeze Panes, depending on if you have activated it previously or not. Now let's move on to the second part of the video and talk about customization in the customization worksheet. In general terms, there are two types of customizations you can do in this template. The first one corresponds to changing the labels across your entire template, which is done in this customization worksheet. You will find 4 sections in this worksheet, one for the labels in your journal, and then one for each of the dashboards: Wellbeing, Wellness, and Habits. Within each of these sections, you will find several tables containing the labels and/or symbols or icons used in the entire worksheet. For example, take a look at this table. Now, if you want to customize your template, all you have to do is change the values on the right of these tables, the ones under your translation, or icon, or symbol, or any of these headers that are colored in dark green. As I mentioned, the values on the left are there for you to keep as reference. Following this idea, you can also translate this template into any other language, but obviously you have to do that manually. It is very important for you to remember that you will never overwrite labels directly in the template, as the link back to this worksheet will be lost. Now, the second and more important type of customization is the one you will do in your journal, defining your dates and metrics, as well as the one you will do in your dashboard views. Let's move to the third section of the video and talk about your daily journal first. This My Journal worksheet, or simply the journal worksheet, has 3 logical sections. First, you have the dates section, comprised of your start, end, and highlight date. This section spans to the right and covers the headers that indicate every single day across your journal, starting on column I all the way to column NO. The second logical section is the metrics and parameters section, which appears on the left-hand side panel below your start, end, and highlight dates. This section is comprised of column B to F and spans all the way down to row 49. Finally, you have your daily journal section, which is a matrix resulting from the intersection of the dates in the columns and the metrics in the rows of your journal. The first thing you will have to do is to set the dates for your journal, which can be any time frame up to 53 weeks long or 371 days in total. When dates are empty, as I just deleted them, no calendar will be shown and required fields will be highlighted in yellow. You will set your start and end dates in your journal by entering a date in your local language format. For me, it's the US, so if I want to input January 1st of 2024, I will simply do so like this. And let's say my end date is 371 days after that, so January 5th of 2025. And there you go, my calendar is now updated. The header section of your calendar will show the month and year, as well as the week and week number, and the days, both initial and number. As I mentioned, every column starting on this column I will represent a day in your journal. And by default, it always starts in week 1, but doesn't really matter if it's January 1st or the start of the month. Whatever date you state here will correspond to this column, always. Let's see, for example, May 5th of 2000 2024. It now starts with May 2024, the 5th, and it's still week 1. So that logic will always apply no matter which date you set at start date. Let's undo that. This third highlight date parameter is completely optional. By default, it implements a formula setting it to today's value. And what it does, as you saw at the beginning of the video, is that it highlights that corresponding date in your journal. So as you can see, September 6th is a Friday, and every cell is highlighted by adding a border color. Also, the header has different background color. Now, a few additional notes on your dates. Given that the template is designed as a weekly journal, I suggest you use complete 7-day periods. That is, your time frame must be a multiple of 7. That, however, doesn't necessarily need to be the case. So, what happens if I set December 31st as my end date? Now I have a full calendar year, but see what happens in my journal. I still have 53 weeks, but the last 2 days do not complete it because I'm missing 5 days. So it gets a gray color background instead of the green one. This just indicates that last week is missing some days to be a complete 7-day week, but there's no error. While my suggestion is for you to use full weeks or even the full 53-week period, you can choose whatever period you want as long as it does not exceed 371 days in total. Once you have defined your dates, the next thing to do is to define the metrics and parameters. So let's go section by section, starting with Wellbeing. In this section, you will track 3 fixed and predefined metrics: energy, mood, and stress levels. You will start by setting up the numeric range you will use for each of these metrics, specifying mean and max values. You can choose any range from 0 to 100 using whole numbers, and each metric has its own independent set of parameters. Once you do that, you will see that the dropdowns will be updated. So in this case, my mean is 1, my max is 10, and I have this sequence of whole numbers that is. But if I choose, say, 3 to 11, now my dropdown shows 3 all the way to 11, increments by 1, whole numbers always. I'm gonna undo that now. Next thing is for you to define what good, neutral, and bad is by setting thresholds 1 and threshold 2 values. This will determine how your dashboard interprets and displays your data. For now, let's just review how to fill your journal. For example, if I'm using a range of 1 to 10 and the threshold values T1 with 4 and T2 with 8, this means that for my journal, 1 to 3 is bad, 4 to 7 is neutral, and 8 to 10 is good. Now, a few glimpses of what happens. I'm just going to activate for now this show color coding. You can see that my good is green, so 10, 9, and even 8 here. Then neutral, everything that lies between 4 and 7 is in yellow, so you can see 4 here, 5, 6, 7. And then everything that's below 4, so 1, 2, 3, is red. The one caveat here is that stress levels have a reverse logic. That is, the lower the stress value, the better. So T1 and T2 will have the inverse interpretation for what good, neutral, and bad represents. If I show color coding again, you can see that now 3 in this case is green, and so is 1, so is 2. And whatever's above threshold 2, so 8, 9, 10, is in the red zone. We'll come back to this later. Lastly, as you might have guessed by now, to track your daily values, you will just use the dropdowns included in each of the cells for your journal, which are created based on the chosen values that you specified. So I want to modify this value to a 6. I just do that by using the dropdowns, or you can just input the value directly through your keyboard. Now, a slight detour across your entire template, you might find red highlighted values like this one. Now, whenever you see these red bright color in the background, it means you have done an error that is either something against the logic or something that's not allowed by the template. In this case, I set these two values equal to each other, which is something that's not allowed. Let's undo that for now. Next up, wellness. For wellness, you will track 5 predefined metrics: your water intake, exercise time, meditation time, sleep time, and the number of healthy meals you eat in a day. You can always adapt the labels in the customization worksheet. So, for example, if you want to specify your water intake in ounces, but do not change the order of these metrics. You will simply need to set a daily goal for each of the metrics. So, for instance, this represents 2 liters of water intake per day, 45 minutes of exercise, and so on. Notice that each goal is preceded by the greater than or equal to symbol. This means that you will be aiming to reach or even surpass the specified target. For all wellness metrics, you cannot change this greater than or equal to symbol, as it is already implemented in the logic of the spreadsheet. To track your daily values, you will simply input them in the corresponding row and column. So for every day and every metric, you will assign the value. Finally, let's talk about habits. You can track up to 30 daily habits, each with their own weekly completion goal. You just need to simply write down each of your habits directly in the space provided. Then, you will use the dropdown in days per week to specify the weekly completion target. Finally, to track your habit, you will use the dropdown provided with the checkmark or the dash values. Using the dash or leaving it blank will have the same effect. To mark a habit as completed for a given day, you will use a checkmark. Let's add a habit right now. So let's say I want no TV after 9 p.m. And I want to do that, say, 5 days a week. Now my habit is defined, and to track it, as I mentioned, I simply use a check mark whenever I have completed that habit. I'm leaving the other cells blank, and as I mentioned, that will be the same as using the dash to indicate that I did not complete the habit on those days. A few additional notes on your habits. When a habit has not yet been defined or its name is missing, essentially the cells in the tracker will be grayed out and they will not show any value, even if there's information there. What happens if I delete these? Let's undo that now. Second thing is that, as you saw when I was filling it out, the yellow color appears on the days per week cell in case a habit has already a name but the target's not yet been set. So, for example, I just deleted the 6, but if I put it back, then the yellow color disappears. Remember, habits always have a target between 1 and 7 because it's either 1 to 7 days per week. Finally, your habits also have the greater than or equal to symbol preceding your weekly goal, meaning that you will be aiming to reach or even surpass your specified target. You cannot change this symbol. If needed, a habit can be restated for this to remain applicable. For example, instead of defining a habit called smoking no more than 2 days a week, you could change that to say not smoking 5 days a week. One last thing regarding your journal. Each year or every new time period you have chosen, you will have to create a new file to begin a new journal. For this, you have two options. Option 1 is to create a copy of your current file in Excel. How you do that is you go to File, and then you click on Save a Copy, Save, you specify the name and location of your copy, and then you're done. Option 2 is you can copy and paste the file directly in your File Explorer, and then rename your copy if you want by right-clicking on the file name. Just creating a copy of this journal worksheet or even the other dashboard ones will not work because there are hidden references and formulas that will not be carried over. So remember, you will have to create a new file every new time period you need. This concludes part 1 of the Be Well, Live Well digital journal demonstration. See you in part 2 to show you the amazing functionalities implemented in the dashboards.